Dark Souls 2 is the hardest game ever made. I'm Matt Elliott from CBG and I'm here with Matt Gilman from Games Master, and that's the question I'm going to be putting to you, Matt. Is it true?
No. If it was the hardest game ever made, it probably wouldn't be one of the best games ever made, because just being hard in and of itself isn't really what makes Dark Souls 2 such a fantastic experience.
So it is a particularly good experience. I don't want to go too much into the sort of story and location and stuff, because I think that's a thing that is best discovered as you play. But could you just give us a brief overview? So
yeah, your player character has been cursed and has wandered into this strange land of Drangleic to apparently find the cure to this curse. And it's very, very, very vague, and that's pretty much all you know going in as well, and that's deliberately so. There's a lot of story there, and it's all kind of hidden away very passively for you to absorb by looking at the area and by kind of reading item descriptions and things like that. So it's a very passively told story, really well done. In
much the same way that the Dark Souls was, is that the story was there underneath, but
definitely
you had to look for it yourself.
Yeah, part of the reason why I'm not telling you more is because I don't know much more. Because even like 50, 60 hours in, there's still kind of little story beats which I'm just picking up on, or just discovering from talking to other people who've clearly paid more attention, or you know, we share things between ourselves, because part of the joy is discovering things as well.
I think that's an amazing thing to say about any game, is that 60 hours in you can still be finding stuff out about a story that is so well layered. Definitely.
I mean, I remember years after Dark Souls, the first Dark Souls coming out, starting a new game and watching the starting cutscene again, and thinking, oh, suddenly linking things together. And you can do the same thing with the starting cutscene in Dark Souls 2 as well.
So sort of what are the biggest ways that it's different or perhaps harder than Dark Souls?
So, mentioned in the review, one of the most immediate things you'll notice is that they've altered the way you heal in the game. So you have Estus flasks, the same as before, but they're upgraded a lot slower, and it actually takes a long time to drink them. So you also have life gems, which you can use instantly, which are finite. You'll run out of them, but those will bump your health up as well. But they've changed the way that humanity works. Okay. So in the original Dark Souls, you were almost rewarded for wandering around as a hollow. By not being human, you saved yourself from invasions, and you weren't really punished for it. This time, when you die, when you become hollow, you will lose a little chunk of your health bar, and you'll keep losing bits of your health bar until you're down to about 50%, unless you become human again. Becoming human actually costs an item, another finite item. So there's this added pressure of running out of the thing which will make your life a lot easier. So that makes things a bit harder. Maybe not harder, but certainly more stressful.
How does it actually feel then? Because I mean, there was always that comfort blanket with Dark Souls, is that you would roll away and like have a quick swig of your Sunny Delight and then get back in the fight. Does it feel quite different then?
Yeah, well, like I say, taking an Estus, you have to plan that out. There's one boss fight in particular where you need to heal constantly to stay alive, and you have to time those heals really carefully. Like I say, you have those life gems to kind of top you up when you absolutely desperately need healing quickly, but because they're finite, because they will run out, it's not so much harder. It's just this added pressure, this added like tactical thought process you have to go through whilst you're fighting.
Right, and this sort of theme of things being finite runs throughout the whole course of the game. Is that right?
So back in the original Dark Souls, you would maybe run up against Ornstein and Smaug or whoever, and you'd think, right, okay, I'm not ready for this. I'm going to go away and farm a little bit, collect a few souls, explore a little bit, and come back once I've leveled up and kind of invested a bit more in my stats. But this time out, if you find a good farming area, I found a good spot near the Heights Tower of Flame, where I was wandering around there collecting loads of souls for a while, and then suddenly you'll notice that some of the enemies aren't respawning. This is a very deliberate anti-farming measure almost, to kind of prevent you from you can't farm. You can't keep going to the same place and absorbing as many souls as you can until you can't break the game. You have to deal with what's put in front of you at a certain point. You are going to run out of souls. You're going to run out of items if you keep doing that. The flip side of that is also that by the time you've died 20-25 times on a certain boss, you'll run up to that boss will likely be totally clear. So it's almost like FromSoftware saying, yeah, we've made it a bit harder because you're going to run out of souls, but at the same time we've made it a bit easier because you've got a free run towards the boss. But then you've still got the boss to beat, and that's not exactly easy.
I think that seems to be one of the most interesting things about it. It's not just about making individual enemies harder. They've thought of quite clever ways of making the whole thing harder in an entirely different way. Do you think it works overall in terms of a sort of a straight comparison in terms of difficulty and enjoyment of playing it? Because I think whatever anyone says, Dark Souls is like the most enjoyable game to play, and that it's the most rewarding when you get it right. How does it compare to the last one?
One of the really interesting ways in which they have maintained that difficulty. Because I think if you played the first Dark Souls, you might rock up to Dark Souls 2 thinking, yeah, I know how to parry. Yes, I can sideways roll these guys. It's fine. No, you can't. They've tweaked those little things that you've become an elite, expert at, so that just to ensure that when you approach Dark Souls 2, you're still going to go through that period, that bedding in period of like, okay, so parrying's changed. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to have to figure out a new way of tackling these guys. That's one of the really kind of admirable ways which they've worked to make sure that even if you've mastered the first game, you're going to be coming to every single corner in Dark Souls 2 with your shield raised, just to make sure that whatever's around it won't just instantly kill you.
I mean, that's exactly what you want, isn't it? So parrying has changed. I understand that the levelling has changed slightly as well in terms of what you can put things into. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so this might be a personal thing, but one of the things I noticed almost immediately, because the way I played much of the first game was to rely very much on poise, which is a stat which prevents you from being staggered when you're attacked. This, in Dark Souls 1, was tied mainly to your armor rating, whereas now it's tied to an actual stat. There's an extra stat in there called adaptability. Now this stat is quite innocuous. You might not even think, oh, you just kind of notice it on the stat screen when you're leveling up. But pretty soon you'll realise that it's a very important stat, and that you will need it because poise is tied to it. Also, a lot of your elemental resistances are tied to it as well. So like poison resist and things like that. You'll reach different areas. They almost come in waves. Different areas which will say, okay, so you forgot to you've got to put some souls into your adaptability. Okay, here's a poison lake. Yeah, you just tackle that, and so you'll be forced to go back and rethink how you work your stats. And what this does is, like, every time you go back to level up, you have this extra pressure, another extra pressure of where you're going to invest your souls, because there's this extra stat in there which ends up being very important.
It sounds incredible. It sounds like, again, a sort of game that's going to encourage you to think differently every single step of the way. In terms of sort of location, how does it compare to Lordaeron? Like, I know there were some concerns about the fast travel question. Does it sort of link together in that beautiful, seamless way?
Sure. Lordaeron is I think it's going to always be relevant. People are always going to be talking about how well interconnected all those different areas are, and you would be able to build a mental map of that place. With Drangleic, it's simply, I think it's just too big. There's no way they would have been able to interlink it all. And certainly now, even now, talking to other people we've been reviewing it at the same time, we're still talking about how did you get to this place, or I went there but I can't remember how I got there because it's so vast a land to explore. So fast travel is almost necessary.
So the final big question: is it better than Demon Souls and/or Dark Souls?
I think it's a fantastic amalgamation of the two things. It's got that hub feeling of Demon Souls, where you had this one world which you were kind of safe in, and then you branched off. With the fast travel, you get the sense that locations are splintered off almost. So it feels a little bit like Demon Souls in that sense. But it's got the I guess the personality of Dark Souls. It's got that thread of Dark Souls, and the really fine-tuned multiplayer as well. We didn't really touch on the way the Covenant system's changed, but it sounds weird, but it's much easier to kind of fit yourself into a role in Dark Souls 2. So I don't necessarily think it's better than either of those things. I think that it's a fantastic game in its own right, and it deserves to be recognised. So.
There you go. You're going to have to play all three.
Good luck.
Matt, thank you very much. That's
no
awesome.
problem.
Cheers.